Hello everyone and welcome back to another album review. And in this video I'm going to review She Gets What She Wants by Niku Daruma. It's been only a few days since I discovered Niku Daruma thanks to the split they did with Gorsit, an artist that I've been following his works for years, and their sounds might be different or really separate, but it made for a really tight short EP. Those two tracks though from Niku Daruma were enough for me in order to go and listen to some of the other stuff they had released. And Niku Daruma is a relatively new project, and this album over here is a new release. It's only been a few days since the release of this album, and there was no way I was not going to talk about this, because in my opinion this is one of the more essential harsh noise albums from this year. If you're looking for an extremely filthy sound, for something really intense and just really harsh in general, this is the album you should check out. This is the one album, especially from this year, that you should give a listen. What Niku Daruma do with her projects is nothing all that new or something that refreshing or revolutionary, but in my opinion it doesn't need to. What this album provides is a ton of feedback, lots of really loud and aggressive sounds, some elements of power electronics with some really harsh screams at random portions over some songs, and lots of elements of free improvised harsh noise with a ton of frequency shifts. What makes this album more special is how loud it is, how aggressive it is. It sounds so filthy, it sounds so relentless at points, that just for that reason the album manages to grab your attention. Whether that's for a good or a bad reason, it's up for you to decide. But the point is, this is not a harsh noise album from starters. This is one of those albums you listen to, you enjoy, and you discover when you're deep down into the rabbit hole of noise music. It's to the point of no return, when you're just this outcast, this weirdo that has gone through some really weird musical stuff. And then there's also harsh noise wall, which is a discussion topic for another day. I've heard so many weird and so many harsh stuff over the years. This one though has to be one of the harshest, one of the nastiest, one of the filthiest, one of the most disturbing and most disgusting albums I've heard in recent years in harsh noise music. This album is so loud, it's so mind-numbingly insane, it's like so brutal to its sounds, it's just going to mess with your mind. This album has a lot of high frequencies that are going to pierce your ears. This album and the sound of Niku Daruma in general give me tons of vibes from some of the older and first works from Masona, like Madonna, Open Your Cunt, and Like a Vagina. Also even a bit from some of the first works from White House, like the extremely insane and ear-piercing dedicated to Peter Kürten, or also giving me some vibes of some of the more disturbing works from Atrax Morgue back in the 90s, with the most prime example being Slash of a Maniac. I got this Atrax Morgue vibe mostly from the last song, the closer on this thing, Please Guide Us Home, that has some elements that would remind me of some of the instrumentals of this album in particular. In all three occasions, it's not that much with how they manipulate their vocals, but it's mostly with what they do with their instrumentation, with Atrax Morgue using a lot of cutoff and resonance and just having this really free improvised feel to some of his tracks. And then with some of the more unbearable loud frequencies that some of the first works from Masona and White House tend to have a lot. This album starts with a three-part Who's Counting that serves as a great point of continuation in between those tracks, and just leading up to an extremely messy, harsh noise fest. These 3 tracks actually experiment more with some low frequencies as well. Some of the cutoff and resonance effects seem to be way more apparent, and they make for some really intense frequency switch ups. And this 3 part serves as having some of the most insane and some of the nastiest parts in this entire album, having the most variation to it. Then the other 4 tracks are way more messy, and it's the point where the album becomes relentless, where it's hard to sit through this thing just for how aggressive and how just insane it is. Tracks like Body Slim and Crimson, Unrecognizable Faces, and Joyful Permanent Smiles have some of the freakiest, most unsettling, and most disturbing vocals I've heard from an album this year. What's the surprising thing with the vocals on this thing though is that they don't feel like they're that much manipulated, like they're filled with distortion, like serving as another musical variation to this whole thing. Instead, the vocals are extremely straightforward, just having this original unsettling tone to them, and that's something that I really like. It makes up for some of these tracks feeling even more disturbing and unsettling than what they are in the first place. And other than that, in this whole mess of the album, there's not that much to say about it. The only thing I would say I'm not that much of a big fan of, it's the thing that drags this album a bit down, is that at times it can be repetitive and monotonous, because the album is mostly straightforward to its ideas. The variations on this thing mostly come down to the free improvised elements of the whole structure of the songs, rather than having more musical palettes, rather than doing something different with the feedback or the noise surrounding this entire project. And there are moments like the long-winded track Unrecognizable Faces and the closer Please Guide Us Home that at times they can be a bit repetitive, monotonous, and at other times just not feeling all that refreshing. But other than that, this is pretty much my only issue with this album. And like I said, if you're into some extreme underground harsh noise, this is the album for you. It's filthy, it's relentless, it's disgusting, it's one of the nastiest things you can find in recent years. I'm not even joking. That's how intense I think this album is, and it's definitely one of the more essentials in the underground scene. This album is going to make your ears bleed, it's going to make your brain melt from the inside out, it's going to make you want to rip your guts off, and it's so disgusting that it might make you want to puke. This album makes me feel like I'm a masochist having the best torture experience of my life. I do not recommend this thing for anyone, it's not for the faint of heart, and it's not for people who have a trouble with some really loud, high frequencies. But if you're a psychotic masochist, this album is made for you. I'm going to give this album an 8- out of 10. What's your opinion on this album? Like it, dislike it, why, and what do you want me to review next time? Let me know down in the comments. Leave a like if you enjoyed the video, subscribe for more content like this. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video. Goodbye.